This is Talking Drupal, a bi-weekly chat about web design and development by a group of guys with one thing in common. We love Drupal. Visit us at talkingdrupal.com. This is episode 3 of Exploring Drupal 8, Theming. Welcome, guys.
Hey, Steve. How's it going?
Doing well. So we're here to record episode number 3. The first 2 episodes we did were on what's new in core. And we're doing a 8-part series here for Drupal 8. 6 of those parts are coming in audio and video through the Talking Drupal stream like you would usually get them, the feed. And then we're doing 2 webinars, first on January 12th and the second on January 19th, where we're going to have live Q&A to ask and answer questions that you have regarding the content we've provided. So this is a great way to get started with Drupal 8. And joining us, we have myself, John Picozzi, and Nick Laughlin, the usual Talking Drupal team. And we also have Nick and Mike from Sego Solutions. Welcome, guys.
Hey, guys. Good to be here.
Thanks for having us.
So these are fast-paced episodes. The first 2 we did in about 30 minutes, I think. We're going to try to keep today's to 30 minutes as well. So today we're going to talk about theming, so let's get started.
Great. Awesome. So yeah, we're going to be switching gears a little bit in this episode. We're going to dive into the theming layer in Drupal 8. And there's a lot to talk about in the theming layer within Drupal 8. Just to provide kind of a general overview of where we're at, the structure of our themes hasn't changed all that much. So we still have this idea of, sub-theming and our parent themes and all that type of stuff. A lot of the ideas around template files and how we override template files, a lot of those concepts are still intact. So all of our knowledge from what we know about in Drupal 7, we're not throwing 100% of that out, which is great. But we are introducing a lot of new things to learn, some really exciting things to learn. Some of the kind of like smaller details are things like our info files, and we're going to see this throughout Drupal 8. Even within the module development layer, is we don't really have these info files anymore. They're all powered by YAML files. So we'll be writing a lot of YAML when we're doing theme development, when we're doing module development. That's pretty easy to kind of get around. It's just a different type of text file that we got to just specify certain things like the name of our theme and maybe the parent theme and things like that. There's some new directives that we're going to talk about a little bit later that we throw into that YAML.info file. We also have our template. We still have our template.php. So for those of us that are familiar with that, in Drupal 7 we were able to put hooks within our template.php. This is where we put a lot of our pre-processing functions. So we wanted to change some of the variables that we injected into our templates. We would manipulate those within our template.php. It's not called the template.php anymore in Drupal 8. It's called the whatever your theme name is .theme file. It's still just a PHP file that contains the various functions. It's very procedural in nature. A lot of the things we're seeing in D8 are not procedural; they're object oriented. So we have these large object hierarchies and things like that. The theme file, which is another extension we need to put into our editors to say, no, this is a PHP file. It's a .theme file. Will contain just these procedural functions that have our pre-processing and all that type of stuff. Other than that, the structure of our themes are very similar. They live within the root directory /theme directory. So it's not in this cites all themes directory anymore. That's consistent with our modules as well. So that's pretty cool, I guess, right? We could just put our themes right within the root directory.
Quick question about the theme file. Is that just straight PHP then? And is that the only place that has PHP in the theme now?
Yeah. I don't think it's the only place we're going to put PHP, but I think we want to try to do that. We're not going to see PHP within our templates anymore. And that's kind of the next topic I want to talk about here is the new templating system. So the new templating system, we're throwing out PHP template. So PHP template is not in Drupal 8. And I think this is a good thing. I mean, we're in the Drupal 7 world, we're kind of expected, themers are expected to know PHP because we need to use it within our templates. And I think that's been a very frustrating aspect for a lot of designers and themers is that, hey, now I need to learn PHP when I really just want to, use CSS, HTML, and some structures and things like that, not have to learn a full programming language to do my theming. In Drupal 8, we're using the Twig templating system. So this is another project that's coming over from Sensio Labs. Those are the guys behind the Symfony framework as well. So the Twig theming framework is what we're currently using within Drupal 8. And that exposes a really interesting layer for us to be able to develop our templates. And it's something you can use outside of Drupal. So a lot of the things in Drupal 8, this whole get off the island mentality is persistent within the theming layer as well, particularly with the Twig templating system. So,
Nick, do you have a sense of how popular the Twig system is outside of Drupal?
That's a good question. I think within the PHP community, it's probably pretty popular. There's so many templating systems out there. It's hard to keep track of them. But I would say that Twig is pretty popular, especially given the fact that I think it's pretty much the de facto within the Symfony communities. Mm-hmm. So, Symfony applications are using Twig. The larger CMF framework, the Symfony CMF framework, I believe, is integrated with Twig. So, I think we do see a lot of adoption outside of our space in Drupal. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and go ahead, Nick, I'm sorry.
So there's obviously huge benefit to that whole concept of getting off the island. The ability to have other minds outside the Drupal community improving things that help improve Drupal as well is really particularly appealing. Given that most of the stuff in the Drupal sphere, only Drupal people really care about that. So having something outside of that is certainly helpful. What's your sense of how tightly integrated Twig is? I mean, is it easy to update Twig, as a point release of Drupal, or is it something that we're gonna have to wait until, Drupal 9 to get, the newer Twig versions?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think right now we're gonna see Twig update as Drupal updates itself. I don't think we're gonna be upgrading point releases within a given release of Drupal 8 right now. That's not to say we probably can't do that if we wanted to. A lot of this stuff is managed by Composer. So we can, modify our Composer file and do an install and see what happens. Kind of going along that exploring Drupal 8 theme. See how bad it's great.
Okay, so it's not going to be a situation like what jQuery is or has been with Drupal in the past.
Maybe like a jQuery update module or something like that. And yeah, I don't think so. But I think time will tell there.
It shouldn't watch.
Yeah. But yeah, there's some, I've been following some of the features within Twig and how they're relating to how it's integrated within Drupal. And it doesn't seem like we have all of the features of Twig within Drupal 8. So one of the cool things within Twig template files is that there's no PHP in it, right? So there is kind of executable constructs within template files themselves. So it's going to promote us as themers to stop putting logic within our template files, which I know we're all guilty of. So we really can't do that now. Now it's all within this defined kind of domain-specific language that is Twig. And but we could still have things like declare collections of information within a variable within the template. We can still loop over that collection. We could still have conditional statements. But they're defined within this different type of syntax within the Twig environment, and they're defined with a concept called delimiters. So we have two types of delimiters. We have the open curly bracket parentheses, and then two open curly brackets. And I like the way some of the folks in the community correlated to say you want to say something or you want to do something. So when you want to say something, you use the two curly brackets to say I'm just outputting a variable. But an open curly bracket parentheses is where I'm saying, hey, I want to execute something. So I'm doing a loop or something like that. So we see a lot of that going on. The idea of overriding your templates is very similar. So, if you're familiar with theming today in Drupal 7, you copy the entire theme file and you bring it into your sub theme, and then you start making changes to it. That's still persistent today. So we're still copying these theme files and we're bringing them within our theme itself.
What about the layers and determining what you should name them? Is that easier in Twig, or are you going to need something like Delimiter to find out, okay, if I want to override this particular field in this particular?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that's a huge takeaway to this episode is debugging is orders of magnitude better. I mean, if we all use Delimiter, and it's really annoying, right? It's you have to turn it on. It destroys your DOM, and then you better turn it off right away because you're going to break a million other things in your site, and you're not going to know why. And I got Delimiter enabled. I got to turn that off, right? I mean, we've all experienced that, right? With the Twig debugging system, there's a debug flag within our settings.yaml file, and you simply just set it to true. And now instead of outputting this overlay that is within the user interface, it outputs comments within the DOM that we can then inspect using our inspector. So I wish I could share my screen and show it off, but maybe in one of the webinars we could do this a little bit. But it's really cleanly commented. So you say, all right, here's the template that rendered this block, and it's delimited. So it says at the starting here, this is where this template starts, and then it delimits where it ends. So it ends here. So you know exactly what you need to override. It gives you the full path to what template's currently being used. It gives you the theme suggestions that you can override if you wanted to add some themes, the functions you need to implement to add theme suggestions. Greatly improved debugging with the Twig system.
Great.
Yeah.
Look forward to it.
Yeah, cool. One thing that I don't think we're really using yet is inheritance within the Twig system. So there's this idea of having inherited template files. So you can have like a parent template file that defines what they actually call a block in Twig. Don't get it confused with the Drupal blocks, but it's called a block. There's some discussions out there in the community about renaming that within the scope of only Drupal. So we call it maybe a code block or something else. But I think it was determined that we're just going to not modify Twig and just keep it block. I think that's going to, if we do change it, it'll probably make, Nick, what you were suggesting, harder the upgrade path with Twig. We'd have to constantly modify newer versions to support this new kind of naming schema. So blocks allow us to define overridable sections within our template, within children templates. So we can do things like my region template within my theme extends the core region template. And within that child template, all I have to do is override the given blocks that are defined within its parent. So I don't have to copy the entire structure like we do today, which I think could be quite powerful. But it doesn't seem like that entire idea is fully baked within Drupal 8 today, but there's a lot of energy to kind of maybe bring that in. So I'm excited to see.
Being able to reuse stuff is certainly going to be really powerful.
Yeah.
You know, not having to remember that you have three. You know, I'm having that issue right now with a couple of sites. You know, having to look 3 or 4 templates deep to find and change every instance of a particular field output. Being able to just have inheritance and change it once would be really useful.
Yeah. There's some good discussions out there in the community about what's going on with that, and some are for, some are against it. But I think it's going to come out where we're going to hopefully embrace this if we can. It's a bit challenging because I think there's that idea of copying that full template and bringing it into our theme is pretty, I guess I'll say, well known and familiar to us in our community. But I think we'll get away from it eventually. But yeah, so the next piece of this is our core themes. So we have a couple of, really 2 core themes within Drupal 8 that are worth a discussion. And there's actually a great blog post out there. Lilabot actually wrote up a good post about a tale of 2 themes, and it's a good write-up about these 2 core themes. There's the stable theme, and then there's the classy theme. And the first time I heard the classy theme, I thought like classy, like high end. I'm like, oh, it's a classy theme. I have to check this one out. But that's not what it means at all. It's about actual classes on your elements. So the stable theme is a very lean base theme. It basically just outputs the bare minimum of markup. So it's, I think the goal with the stable theme is that it's going to enable us to have kind of a lean starting point for the sub themes that extend it. I tried using this a little bit, and I quickly became, I found myself adding classes on all of these field elements so I can actually style them and things like that. And I was like, there's got to be a better way. And that led me to the classy base theme, which a lot of the core themes we see in Drupal 8, like 7 and Bartik, are based off of. And the classy theme basically puts a bunch of classes around the different elements within a given site. So, for example, a given field within a content type will be wrapped with a bunch of classes that allow us to say, all right, I want to style all fields, or I want to style just this given field. So it gives us kind of a starting point to be able to style our site without having to inject a bunch of classes into the system.
So it's a little bit more similar to what you expect in Drupal 7 now, where you might get, field or like form dash item, and then, form item title field or something.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah, it seems like classy, from my perspective right now, classy is probably the base theme you'd want to target if you're developing your own theme.
Okay.
If you're trying to integrate maybe a framework like Foundation or something like that, that is very specific with their classing, their class structure, stable may be a better option, because you can.
So is stable a good analog to like Stark in Drupal 7? Or bare minimum?
I think it's leaner. It's leaner than that.
Yeah, that's what I was
really?
going to ask. Is it similar to like Mothership or one of these other like stripped down?
Yeah, it's not as lean as Mothership. Mothership's pretty.
Yeah, I think Mothership is Mothership's the bare minimum to get content on the page.
Yeah, that strips everything down. There's a lot of configurability there too, not to get off topic, but that's cool.
Both of these.
There's a good episode from Modules Unraveled. I think it's the last one that was free. It's episode 150 that has Louis Nyman and Martin on, and they talk about the theming for Drupal 8. So if you're interested to learn a little bit deeper about stable and classy themes, they talk about it quite a bit in there.
Awesome.
I would check that out.
Both of those themes support responsive and the new responsive stuff that's going on in Drupal 8. I would imagine that they do, but
yeah. I mean, they don't define any breakpoints or anything like that. I think by default, I think it's the responsibility of the sub theme to be able to define some of that stuff. But yeah, you can definitely develop responsive sites off of those base themes. For example, 7 and Bartik, they're both based off of classy. Yeah. So the last topic here is the library system, and I thought this was kind of an interesting thing to bring up because we in Drupal 7 we do have the idea of libraries. We usually bring in the libraries API module when we're working, when we have to bring in external tools. The idea of libraries, and I'm a little torn between how this relates to the composer system. Still interested to explore that a little bit further. But there's this idea of a libraries.yaml file, and that allows us to define collections of assets that we want to bring onto the page. Those assets can be CSS files and JavaScript files, and we can define how they're brought onto the page given a given media type. So we can say, this should come on the page for a screen or for print or something like that. We can define these within the .yaml.info file within our theme itself, and we can define the requirements that they that we need them within the theme. So we define the actual libraries. So we say, all right, this library name, say for example, jQuery. jQuery is going to require the jQuery JavaScript file, and it's going to require some theme, like a CSS file that's going to style some of the jQuery components. That can be wrapped within a single library name. So now within the theme, we can say this requires jQuery. We don't have to say this requires the jQuery CSS, this requires the jQuery JavaScript. We could just say this requires jQuery. Now, when we define that we require that within the actual YAML info file within our theme, it's going to bring that library into each page. One of the powerful components of this system is the fact that we don't have to do that. We can actually say, we can bring these libraries in selectively by attaching them to render arrays. So traditionally, we brought a lot of stuff onto a page that we didn't need at any given time. You know what I mean? For example, we may not need jQuery on every page. In Drupal 7, you have it on every page, right? So we can selectively bring in the assets we need for a given page, depending on our application's requirements at any given time. And that,
Nick, where are you defining that per page?
well, you're defining it by attaching it to a render array.
Okay.
So we've probably used like Drupal add JS and Drupal add CSS functions, right? Yeah. That's not in Drupal 8 anymore. That's taken out. So the idea of attaching to a render array is what we want to use now, and we can attach full libraries to these render arrays, and that will bring in all the assets defined within our library's YAML file on any given page.
So we're not going to need the library's API module anymore. Then.
I don't think so. Yeah, it seems like this is kind of going to replace that. One question I do have though is, what if two modules need the same types of libraries at maybe different versions? Not sure that handles it. And you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, how well did the libraries module handle that anyway?
I don't think it handled it very well at all.
I don't think it did whatsoever. So, I mean, that's not a new problem.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, and I mean, I correlating this to, I guess Composer more is back end kind of not really front end assets. So I guess that's where the line is drawn here. This is talking about more front end stuff. But we're seeing a lot of energy in front end package managers like Bower and things like that too. So I wonder how that's going to play a role within this system as well. But yeah, so I think that's pretty exciting. I think the idea of being able to attach to a render array, and because of the fact that we can modify these render arrays within the pipeline all over the place, we can really inject and modify what maybe other modules do or what core modules do, and bring in our own assets.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it's pretty cool stuff. I mean, there's a lot to explore within the theming layer. I mean, we can go on for a little while. I'm playing around with my own base theme now, trying to figure out how to do things like layout and things like that within the theme. And I didn't know this, but there's actually a full release of Display Suite. So that's kind of like moving me away from doing layout in my theme and doing it in Display Suite. But
you have to play around with that. And choosing, is it easy to? I mean, are you able to do things like choose view modes when you're doing layout, or is it in the theme layer, or is that still controlled elsewhere?
You still have that idea of the kind of this hierarchy in your template file, so you can override just the view mode template by naming it the correct way.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll be familiar.
Yeah. How close do you think that we've come to getting as much of the markup out of the module code as possible? Have we achieved that in Drupal 8?
I don't think so, because we still have we still have hook theme. So if your module wants to define its own markup, we still have the hook theme implementation that goes into your .module file. I think there's a couple of ways to get around that now with some base classes that you can extend, but I'm not sure that's landed yet in the current release. But we're still going to see template files defined within our modules and things like that. But those template files will be Twig files now.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool. That's
awesome. Anything else on theming that we need to chat about?
Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, that's pretty much what I have. And
it's the area I've done the least amount of research into, because I'm generally not doing a whole lot of theming anyway. So it's the area that I've paid attention to the least personally.
Yeah, I mean, and we're going to touch upon it in the module development talks a little bit about the REST API, and I think we're a little fractured within the theming world because there's a lot of energy in just this headless Drupal idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so bypassing this whole layer altogether and just outputting JSON that can be consumed from an Angular app or something like that. But I don't. This is obviously not going away. There's a time and a place for all of this.
So that wraps up episode 3 on theming, and I want to remind you that this is an 8-part series. We're on part 3 now, so there are 6 other audio and video recordings that you can listen to about Drupal 8, and then on January 12th and 19th, we're going to have webinars that you can sign up to at exploringdrupal8.com, and those webinars will do a visual presentation of these main topics with Q&A. So it's a great place for you to get your questions answered and stump us. So join us on those days. Sign up soon. So as usual, thanks everyone for joining. I'm Stephen Cross from Parallax. We have John Picozzi. Where can people find you, John?
As usual, you can find me on all the major social networks at John Picozzi and always on at umthink.com.
And how about Nick?
You can find me online at Nixvan, NICXVAN, pretty much everywhere.
And special thanks to our guests, Nick and Mike from Sego Solutions. Nick, where can people find you guys online?
Thanks, Steve. Good to be here. You can find me at Direct on Twitter, and our website is Sego Solutions. That's SEGO Solutions.com. And we have an interesting project going on right now at Stackstarter.io. It's a tool for us to be able to spin up development environments instantly for training purposes, and we'll be using that during the webinar. So it should be a cool way to touch Drupal 8.
Yeah, great. It's I had an opportunity to use it. I sat in your training at NedCamp and got a chance to use Stackstarter. It was a great experience. So anyone out there training should take a look at that.
Awesome.
And Mike, how about you? Where can people find you?
Yep. So I'm at mmars9. That's MMARZ9. Pretty much everywhere. And again, we look forward to having all the listeners come and join us on the webinar. And definitely check out Stackstarter.io. It's a cool project that we've been working on a lot this year, so we're excited about it.
Excellent. So next episode is number 4, and we will be talking about moving into module development side of this series. And I think in the first episode, we'll probably be hitting routing.
Yep.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So join us at talkingdrupal.com or exploringdrupal8.com. See you guys soon.
All right. Take care.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.